Hey, everybody. It is a live mailbag version of the Flagship Podcast. I am Chip Brown of horns247.com, joined by the managing editor of Horns 24/7, Taylor Estes. Taylor, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Chip. How are you doing? I'm excited. I like these Monday mailbag shows that we've been starting to do. They're always fun to interact with our audience here. But how are you doing?
Yeah, good. I mean, we are a week out from the beginning of spring football, and I I wrote today in the morning brew that this is arguably the most important season Texas has had in the last 15 or so years, really since the end of the early 2000s. And when you talk about expectations, you talk about the final year in the Big 12 before going to the Southeastern Conference and, um, delivering on the expectations. That's what championship programs do. They do it year in and year out. And I don't think it's any surprise or secret that Texas is probably going to be picked to win the Big 12 by the majority of pickers, coaches, media, you name it, Vegas. And and so when you're getting ready to head off to the vaunted SEC, it's time to start delivering on expectations. Steve Sarkisian deserves a ton of credit for the recruiting that he's done, finding giant humans to play on the offensive and defensive lines. Great job in the transfer portal. Great job with high school recruits. And as Chris Del Conte told us on the Flagship Podcast last week, make sure you check out that Flagship Podcast. He said all the building blocks are in place, and you come to Texas for these kinds of expectations. So I think there's a lot of excitement and a lot of anticipation with regard to this upcoming football season, and we'll start to get a glimpse of what's going on a week from today.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Chip, because I can't recall a time where Texas has been the favorite to win the Big 12 and probably will be picked in the preseason, media polls leading, when Big 12 media days do roll around. I don't recall a time in my career covering Texas where that has been the case. So it's huge. I mean, for Steve Sarkisian to be in this position in year three on the job, this is not an easy job to have if you're the head coach at Texas. Obviously, as you mentioned, Chris Del Conte, in our interview with him from last week, though, one thing he talked about when he was talking about Red McCombs is, you kind of love or hate him with some of the things that he said. He was really spot on when it came to what it takes to be able to be in this type of position as the head coach of Texas football. And, you have to have the right type of personality. You have to understand the true tradition of Texas, the University of Texas, and Texas football, and you have to embrace the fact that you are going to be scrutinized essentially at any given moment. And Steve Sarkisian obviously dealt with a lot of adversity the first season, that 5-7 season that Texas did have, but then the way that they've recruited, the way that last season played out, I know some fans wanted more than 8 wins, but from a 5-win team to an 8-win team and getting the number 3 ranked recruiting class in the country, in the 2023 recruiting class, that should not go unnoticed. So I think there is a lot of excitement. There's a lot of eyeballs. There's going to be a lot of scrutiny on Texas, especially if they don't perform early in the season. But it doesn't necessarily mean, like they're going to Alabama. If they lose the Alabama game, it doesn't mean everything's over. I think that the expectation should be Big 12 title appearance this year. And as you and I have talked about, and Texas is really poised in a position to actually make that more than just an expectation, actually, answer the call.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's you got to get the quarterback. You got to get the quarterback position right, and it looks like Texas is doing that. You got to have offensive and defensive line experience. Texas has that coming into this year. All 5 starters back in the offensive line. You've got experienced leadership at every position group on defense, even though you have some some players you have to replace: DeMarvion Overshone, Anthony Cook, Deshaun Jameson, but you've recruited well. I wrote about Anthony Hill in the Insider last week, and he is definitely someone to keep an eye on this spring because he's an early enrollee, and he's going to be given the first opportunity to replace DeMarvion Overshone. I mean, he's going to be working at weak side linebacker along with David Benda and Mo Blackwell. So this is going to be fun. I mean, you got to have, I always say, you got to have talent on the runway. After one plane takes off, you got to have another plane ready to take off and another plane waiting behind that plane. And so that if you have injuries, you're okay. And that's where Texas appears to be right now. So let's get it on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to be really fun to watch. And as you said, spring football starts on March 6th. The spring game is April 15th, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of storylines to watch, no doubt about it. Anthony Hill, yeah, if you did not read the Insider, Chip did a really good piece on Anthony Hill talking to high school coaches, his father, everything. I mean, it was a really good piece, but this is a guy that could make an impact, and Texas will be in a good position if he does. I think, you don't necessarily always want to rely on true freshmen coming in, but when you lose a guy like, DeMarvion Overshone and having the linebacker position be still a little bit young, aside from Jalen Ford, you want to have those 5 stars come in and make that immediate impact. And he's in a position to do so. And if anybody's watched his tape, I think it speaks for itself, and this is Anthony Hill, I like to joke, is Chip's man crush of the 2023 recruiting class, because he is all about Anthony Hill. And I think is a good one to pick, honestly, because he's really in a good position to make an impact early on in his career at Texas.
Yeah. I can't wait to see this guy. I mean, I think the stories you hear remind me a little bit of what we heard about Kelvin Banks coming in. And Kelvin Banks was not even an early enrollee.
Yeah.
He came in June and just started wowing people, and then came in and played at an all-conference level as a true freshman. I think I don't want to put this on the kid, Anthony Hill, put those expectations on him, but I just think he's a kid who loves football, loves contact, is a sponge. I hear he's killing it in winter workouts, and I think the coaches feel pretty good about his ability to be an immediate impact player in 2023. So I don't anoint freshmen like that very often, but I'm anointing him, Taylor, because what I'm hearing and what his body of work and his body, those long arms, the strength. I mean, this is a kid who squatted 550 pounds in high school and was on a 40.7 4x100 relay that finished second at state. And he's 6'2", 228 and ran a 10-second leg in that relay. Now, they don't break out the splits, but 4 guys ran, 40.7. So Anthony Hill, pretty freaky in terms of that athleticism.
Yeah, the type of linebacker Texas probably hasn't had all the time, but when they have had it, you are like just chomping at the bit, waiting to see what they can do and the type of impact that they can make. And he fits that mold, in my opinion.
Yeah, kind of like Derek Johnson. I mean, it's been probably that long since you could kind of draw up an athlete like Anthony Hill. So let's see if he can put it all together. And we saw Jalen Ford take a big step at the linebacker position. Jeff Choate, great job recruiting at linebacker. He's got Leonga Lafau also in as an early enrollee, Darian Gillette. And then Oksana. Oh, good Lord.
I'm sitting here thinking like I would help you because I always feel bad when you can't think, but I butcher names so bad that, what is it?
His
I don't know
sister
how to say
plays
his
on the
name.
volleyball team. I know that.
Yeah, I don't know how to say his name. So Silly Akana, is that what it is? Sorry.
Tassili Akana. Sorry.
Tassili. Yeah, Tassili. I'm like,
Tassili
I know it's like
Akana.
tall, silly. Yeah.
So,
um,
and all those guys are,
and
4
Samaje
star
Burrell,
recruits.
coming into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Should we get to some of the questions?
Yeah. And if you are watching live on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel or the Horns 24/7 Facebook page, feel free to submit comments, questions on there, and we will try to get yours too. We have a pretty decent number of Horns 24/7 member questions that we'll tackle here, but feel free to send us more questions in the comments, and we will try to get to all of them today. But this first one, Chip, I'm going to start with this from Horns 24/7 member Mikey Gress 6. If and when Sark hires an offensive assistant to the head coach, do you suspect that person will have the role of offering in-game advice to Sark for calling the offense?
I hope so. We've talked about this a little bit. I feel like Sark needs a voice kind of on par with Gary Patterson, his special assistant on defense. When he makes that hire for the special assistant role on offense, I absolutely think it should be a voice who Sark respects and listens to. And I think that's what Sark's looking for. And that's not always as easy to find, maybe because of timing, as Sark would like. Plus, Nick Saban is sort of the place where fired coaches go to rehabilitate themselves. But I think Steve Sarkisian would like to have that same kind of situation going at Texas. If he can get some of the bright minds that may or may not have worked out at a place, but certainly are capable and have maybe been a head coach, I think that would be exactly what Steve Sarkisian needs, because I think that's a question that I'm certainly going to ask Sark when we get together here at the beginning of spring football, in terms of, those voices that he truly listens to in game. Is it just AJ Milwee? Is it Jeff Banks? So I think that's what he needs. Taylor, how about you?
Yeah, I think that's definitely what he needs. I mean, what happened with Gary Patterson last year was just kind of perfect timing for Texas with him getting let go at TCU. But I think he definitely needs that. Now, I wonder if he did have anybody on staff that he did listen to last season, honestly. And that's not like a knock on Sark. It's not a knock on the assistant coaches. I've talked about this. You've talked about this on the Flagship Podcast, but being the head coach and the offensive play caller, there's so many other responsibilities. It's not like, a traditional just offensive coordinator, play caller of the offense that when the offense isn't on the field can go and talk to the players, can go, when they're on the bench, can be more on the headset with with AJ Millie, with the guys that are communicating on the headset. When you're a head coach, you can't just walk away if you're the offensive play caller, because you've got to, be focused on what's going on the field on defense too. And so I think that's where, kind of what Jimbo Fisher has done at Texas A&M in hiring an offensive coordinator, play caller type of thing. I think if Sark doesn't find a special assistant to the head coach on offense that he can trust, I think that's got to be probably the next step. And it's going to be interesting to see how and if, or, when Sark would potentially ever come up with, or giving up those responsibilities. You can still have your offense and not call the plays, right? Like, it's still going to be Steve Sarkisian's offense. It's not like he's going to hire an offensive coordinator and just totally rebuild the entire offense the way that they play or the way that they recruit, anything. Like, it'll still be his offense. It'll be really interesting though to see if he does get to a position where I think it would be like the writing on the wall. Everyone probably knows he needs to give up those responsibilities, if he will. And that's something that we'll learn about him. He's never not called the offense as a head coach. Obviously, he has not been a head coach prior to Texas for several years, but still, when he was at Washington, he called the offense. When he was at USC, he called the offense. When he was hired at Texas, that was something people asked him in his first interview, and he's like, "Yeah, this is why I got this job. Why wouldn't I continue doing that?" We'll see if it's going to play out here. But definitely, I think if there is a Gary Patterson-esque type of coach, but on offense, that would be huge for him to nab. I just don't know at this point, with that job being posted for so long, if that person is out there. And you don't want to just fill a role to fill a role. Like, just like when they talk about recruiting, they don't want to just recruit, a player just to recruit a player if they don't feel like it's a good fit. And I feel like, it's going to be interesting if they can find that special assistant on offense. But with it being, it's been posted for what, over 30 days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there were some names we had heard early on, and they kind of fell through the cracks a little bit. So we'll see. But it definitely would help if he does find a guy like Gary Patterson on offense to help him out.
Yeah, I see this comment here from S. Roan 45. Norm Chow, former BYU USC offensive coordinator. And Norm Chow is now 76 years old. So I don't know how hard he wants to work at this point, but Norm Chow is certainly a proven offensive mind who carries a lot of respect. That's an interesting name, S. Roan 45. All right, Taylor, what else we got?
Let's go to this next one here. From Horns 24/7 member J Ray 007. Who are the two players you think need to have a breakout spring? One on offense, one on defense. I'll let you go first.
Well, on offense, I think you obviously want the quarterback to have a breakout. You'd love for Quinn Ewers to just take total control of the operation, have all kinds of confidence, and become more of a vocal leader. You've lost Roschon Johnson, the unquestioned vocal leader of the offense. Now you got to find replacements for him. I've written about Jatavian Sanders emerging in that role as Texas's first team All Big 12 tight end. But you need more. You need guys on the offensive line. You'd love to have really a voice at every position group if that's at all possible. But I think CJ Baxter, you'd love to have him have a breakout spring, I think, because he's a super talented running back. We're hearing great things about him in winter conditioning. This is another guy who's kind of mature beyond his years, was the number one running back in the country in the 2023 class, and a guy who can run it, catch it, very similar. And I think in terms of profile and maybe even a little bit in personality to Bijan Robinson, we'll see if he's as productive. But that's the big question mark coming in this year is, okay, who's going to take over at running back? And we know Jonathan Brooks had the hernia surgery. He's going to miss some of spring. And so, CJ Baxter is a guy we're hearing they're going to put a lot on in the spring. And that's going to really sort of accelerate his curve. So I'll say CJ Baxter on the offense, along with, of course, Quinn Ewers. And on defense, man, I hate to do this to these freshmen, but I'll say Anthony Hill because, again, huge question on defense. Who takes over for DeMarvion Overshone? Okay, well, Anthony Hill's getting a look there. And this is a guy who, as we just said, is really talented, seems mature beyond his years. So, Taylor, how about you?
Yeah, on offense, I agree with you. I think Quinn Ewers is a guy that needs to have a breakout spring. Um, I think he will, though. I mean, the leap that quarterbacks tend to take between year one and year two as a starting quarterback is pretty substantial. I mean, go back to Sam Ellinger, from his 2017 season to his 2018 season. He led Texas to the Sugar Bowl and to an upset over Georgia that was supposed to be in the college
We're
football playoff.
back.
People were complaining, Georgia fans saying that they got kind of screwed out of the college football playoff. Like that was a college football playoff, bubble team essentially. I know that's not really a phrase, but I think Quinn Ewers, he's a guy that needs to have a breakout spring, and honestly, probably just fully secure himself as the starting quarterback, because he is the starting quarterback. Like, I know that Steve Sarkisian said, every offseason, every position is up for grabs, all of that. That's something coaches have to say, but he is QB1. And there were up and down performances, with Quinn Ewers that he had last season. And with Arch Manning coming in, just to kind of silence the noise around the quarterback room. And all these offseason headlines I see is like, oh, there's a quarterback battle in Austin. It's like, is there? Like, no, there's not really. But in order for those things to go away, I think Quinn Ewers has got to just have a breakout spring to totally silence the noise, and make his claim. And he needs, that's the most important position in sports is quarterback. And so, especially in football. And so, you want him to be taking that next step. And I think on defense, a part of me kind of wants to say Justice Finkley or Alfred Collins personally. Probably Alfred Collins, I would say, would be ahead, just because you've seen glimpses of how good he can be, but not consistently there. And it's hard not to go back to the Alamo Bowl in 2020, when he just had a monster game, and then it was like crickets the following season. I think that the hype was there for him. I really think, he has all of the talent to be a dominant player, but he's got to show it consistently. And I think in spring, that's a guy that definitely needs to have a breakout spring. So those are the two I'm going to go with.
I like that. Yeah, some interesting comments. This one from David Williams saying Cedric Baxter is a difference maker, but he's a true freshman. Jonathan Brooks should be the primary running back. And I don't disagree with that. The question was who's going to have a breakout in the spring. And with Jonathan Brooks being limited, I'm going to hold off on Jonathan Brooks and focusing on CJ Baxter, just because I think he's going to get a lot of work and it's going to give him a chance to break out. And then we'll see. We'll see who emerges and who could be a breakout player heading into fall camp.
Yeah, because with Jonathan Brooks, we haven't even been given an official injury update on him. I got it confirmed through sources after the Alamo Bowl that he did have surgery on the sports hernia. But at that time, there wasn't really a timetable set for his return. It was expected for him to be contributing in spring football, but we don't know at this point how much, how little, anything along those lines. And it's, talking about Jonathan Brooks too, Jaden Blue is a guy you can't forget as well. I mean, that's a guy that didn't, he was a very highly rated recruit coming into Texas. Obviously, the running back room last year was absolutely stacked. So as a true freshman, didn't really see the field, but he's a guy you don't want to forget about either, because he has and maybe he's a good one, honestly, from the running back room to have a breakout season, because if Jonathan Brooks is limited, he's probably second in line with Cedric Baxter.
Yeah, and Jaden Blue is a guy who it felt like Steve Sarkisian forgot about in the Alamo Bowl. After saying Jaden Blue would play, he didn't play.
Yeah.
And that was a little puzzling. So I think Jaden Blue was like, yo, hey, I'm over here.
I'm here. Like, yeah.
So yeah, he's going to get a chance to show what he can do in the spring. I see another comment here from Todd Lacey. Of course, Taylor was talking about a couple of the defensive linemen who could be breakout players. This says, what about guys like Zach Swanson? Originally heard he had a great motor out of high school. Sort of resembles body type of Aaron Humphrey. There you go, getting the Wayback Machine, but plays a different position. Any word on him? I'm hearing great things about Zach Swanson, and Aaron Bryant and Jere Bledsoe. They're just having to wait their turn. I mean, and again, I think Steve Sarkisian and Bo Davis and Pete Kwiatkowski deserve credit for hanging on to these guys, and not having them, get in the portal. They're buying into the fact that they got some older guys ahead of them, and they're having to work their way into the rotation and then work their way up the depth chart. And so Zach Swanson's a guy I'm definitely going to keep an eye on in spring football. But as Taylor said, Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton got more playing time last year than Alfred Collins, and Alfred Collins is 6'5", 30, 300 plus, long arms, NFL body. And as Taylor mentioned, had an unbelievable Alamo Bowl in 2020. Then the coaching change comes, or Chris Ash, he had like 4 different defensive coordinators or 3 different defensive coordinators,
In
coming
3 years.
through. It's just been tough. And now that he's been able to settle in with Bo Davis, I'm expecting big things from Alfred Collins this year. And Zach Swanson just needs to keep coming. Aaron Bryant, same thing. And so if they can do that, be ready, stay ready, because we saw last year at the cornerback position when they needed to bring in some freshmen, they weren't quite ready, and they weren't quite prepped, and they got taken advantage of in that Iowa State game. But the next time they came on the field, they looked good. Terrence Brooks, Austin Jordan. Don't forget about Xavion Bryce at corner either, because he's a guy I continue to hear good things about. Another long-armed, long corner who, has talent. Of course, they have Malik Muhammad on campus too. So there are guys like Zach Swanson who are building from the bottom of your roster, talented, and just need to keep fighting their way to the top. And they just got some guys ahead of them who've, got some proven experience.
Yeah. And that should go to show too, with like Pete Kwiatkowski and Bo Davis, how well they've done with getting the current players on the roster to buy in, as you had said, because it's so easy for players to transfer nowadays. But Bo Davis, I mean, his career speaks for itself. He's coached in the NFL. He's coached at the highest areas of college football too. Coached national championship teams. He was a guy, even Keandre Coburn, with him having a decision if he wanted to have the COVID or an additional year of eligibility, he was going to fully rely on what Bo Davis said to him. Like he had told, when I asked him about that, he said he wants to go to the NFL, but if Bo Davis said, no, like this will benefit you to stay back, then he was going to listen to it. Obviously Keandre Coburn did move on though, but Bo Davis deserves a lot of credit, and he's like a fan favorite too, I think, for Texas after that 2021 Iowa State video that was leaked that just saw him basically say everything that Texas fans had been probably screaming at their TVs all season long at that point. And they've done a really good job with that. All right, you want to go an injury question here next?
Sure.
All right. From Horns 24/7 member CJ353, can you give a percentage on how healthy you feel Isaiah Neyor is at the moment? I'll let you go first.
I think he's healthy. I mean, I think he's good to go. And if he's not, then we got problems. I think he's going to be ready to go for the spring. He, he did tear that ACL in fall camp, and it's been August. The recovery for that injury typically is 6 to 9 months. that it used to be a year, and now
Mhm.
it's an injury that, depending on how well the rehab goes and how well the surgery was done and all of that, that it's now a 6 to 9 month um, proposition. So, we haven't talked to Steve Sarkisian yet. There is depth at that position, so there's no need to rush Isaiah Nayer back, but he's running, and I think he's going to be ready to go for the spring. Now, maybe they'll, um, limit him a little bit, but I think I think his rehab is on course. So, um, we'll have to wait and hear what Steve Sarkisian says, but I know Isaiah Nayer's ready. He's chomping at the bit to get back out there.
Yeah, and Steve Sarkisian, I think the last time that he gave an injury update on Isaiah Nayer was at the end of the regular season last year, like in late November, I think it was. And he didn't necessarily say anything about spring football, but he said he should be at least good for 2023 season, the start of the 2023 season. We will hopefully talk to Sark. I know that's probably not really us answering the question. We will talk to him, I imagine, within the next week leading up to the start of spring practice. So that's going to be a time where he can give us an official update. But we haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything, at least, that would say that there's been any setbacks in the recovery. Now, 9 months, it's, in August, what is that? We're 6 months out then from
Yeah, I
that.
mean,
So
we're on
there's
the
still could
early
be,
end of it. We're on the
yeah,
early end of that rehab, and I remember. I'm just thinking back to Luke Brockermeyer, who tore his ACL in the last contact practice 2 years ago, um, leading up to the K-State game, and he was not able to go through spring football. So, um, like I said, there's no rush for him, but his rehab is going well
yeah,
from what um, I've heard from team sources. So um, it'll probably be hard for him not to be out there this spring, but we'll wait and see what Steve Sarkisian tells us.
yeah, for sure. All right. Next one here. Let's see. We'll talk a little bit Texas defense here from Horns 24/7 member Any G's 95. Do you expect the Texas defense to improve again this season?
Yeah, I mean, I do, and I think there are areas where the Texas defense needs to improve, especially in their communication, in their pass coverage. They put in the quarters match defense in their secondary. Gary Patterson is a longtime quarters match guy. He helped them with that, but there were breakdowns in that when you're passing off a receiver from the outside to the middle of the field. Texas was victimized quite a bit in the middle of the field last year, especially deep down the middle of the field. And that's where the communication has to get better between the safeties and the corners, the safety. A guy like Jalen Catalon, that's where he becomes really essential because he's a veteran guy who's super talented and vocal. If he comes in and is as good as we think he is, then that's going to be a big help because Jaron Thompson's a vocal guy. Anthony Cook was not as much of a vocal guy, and not that that's the end of the world. You only need one guy back there who's making all the calls, but I mean, you really do need everyone to be able to communicate. So that's the part of the defense I want to see really improve because I thought Texas played the run really well last year. That's where you're going to miss guys like Keandre Coburn and DeMarvion Overshone. But I do think that there's enough experienced, playmakers with Jalen Ford in the middle of that defense and a bunch of veteran guys coming back on the defensive line that the run defense should not take a step back at all. So
Yeah.
I think what Taylor said about Justice Finkley is big, because he's a guy who should develop into a guy who can rush the passer, who's got to be good against the run as well. I think Ovia Gofu improved last year against the run, but he still didn't. He got pressure on the quarterback, but he didn't get the quarterback to the ground a whole bunch. And Texas needs that pass rusher that everyone fears, that all offenses fear and have to account for. And I think Barron Sorrell's developing into that guy too. But man, you need 2 and 3 pass rushers. And so, I think this defense needs to improve again this year. Taylor, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think the one area that definitely for sure needs to improve is the getting off the field on third downs and fourth downs. That was something that the defense did struggle with at times. When you look at NCAA statistical rankings from last season, that was one of the worst that the defense had. It was in the bottom half of college football. So you want to see that happen. I think a lot of that also is a product of the offense not being able to stay on the field long enough at times too. Guys get tired, and then they're rotating guys that aren't starters because they're getting tired. There's a lot of things I think that did lead to that being a little bit of a problem for Texas in some games last season. So I think that's an area you definitely want to see improvement. But overall, I feel like if the defense stays steady, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing or any type of indication that the defense isn't progressing. Just because there is a lot of experience on defense that Texas is going to have to replace from last year, with DeMarvion Overshone, with Deshaun Jameson, Anthony Cook, Keandre Coburn, Moro Ajomo. I know you had mentioned Ovia Gofu. He's not at Texas any longer either. I mean, that those are guys that have played a ton of football, and so that experience is going to be difficult to replicate. I think that there's a lot of really talented players on this defense, but without having a lot of veteran experience at some of the key positions, I would say your hope should be for them to stay steady, at least defensively. But there are some areas, as you had said too, but also like third down, fourth down defense. I think those are things you want to definitely see improvement though.
Yeah, and we're seeing more and more coaches going for it on fourth down. I mean, that's where Texas Tech really got Texas. That was their Big 12 opener. You had a new coach in Joey McGuire. You had a sample size of non-conference football, but Joey McGuire just kept going for it on fourth down, and Donovan Smith had a great game at quarterback and just kept converting. And it wasn't just 4th and 1, it was 4th and 4. And that's demoralizing. That's demoralizing. And that was part of the issue for sure in that second half of that Texas Tech game. So no doubt about it, Texas is going to have to prepare to play 4 downs and have that mindset to absolutely get off the field.
Yeah, they are going to have to prepare that way until they can prove that they can shut it down, and then teams won't go for it on fourth down. But as you said, Joey McGuire basically put on a clinic of how to beat the Texas defense, and it was going for it on fourth downs, and they did improve as the season wore on. That Texas Tech game was the worst, I would say, but it also was a game where Texas had their backup quarterback and that was injured, playing through an injury in that game too. So I know it probably sounds like I'm making excuses. Honestly, I know how I hear myself talking. I'm like, oh man, there's gonna be people like, okay, like you're just excusing it. But that one was hard to shake. That was definitely a hard performance to shake, and they've got to improve there for sure.
Well, and Donovan Smith now is at Houston, and Texas will play Houston this upcoming season. So they'll see Donovan Smith, but it'll be at Houston. Texas Tech will have Tyler Shuck back at quarterback with Baron Morton. And, those two played on the field together some last year. So Joey McGuire Texas Tech is sort of one of those darling picks coming into the 2023 season. We'll see. They lost some key guys on offense, running back, but Joey McGuire had a good first year, beating both Texas and Oklahoma in his first year at Texas Tech. Tech fans will take that.
Yeah, for sure, especially now with Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. So,
Yeah.
All right, this next one here. I am so sorry to this Horns 24/7 member because he always asks really good questions when we do this, but I feel like every time I say his name, I change it somehow because I don't know what it is. I think it's uh, Ramos OC 88. Is that how you pronounce it? I
Yeah, I
don't know.
like that.
Okay, sorry about that. If you want to send me a DM, let me know how to pronounce your username. That was great because you always ask great questions. But he asks here, will there be an established midweek starter for baseball this year, unlike last year when it kind of felt like a revolving door?
Well, I think we're learning about this team as we go. And I know David Pierce was distraught with the loss to Indiana on Sunday. He called it one of the most embarrassing games he's been a part of as a coach. That's pretty bad. But Texas, like he said, that he had players not reading their cards right. Texas uses cards to communicate what they want to do on the base pass. Runners were running into outs, getting picked off. It was not good. But as far as the pitching, I mean, LeBaron Johnson pitched last Tuesday night against Texas A&M Corpus Christi and looked good. Gave up one run on 3 hits. If he's the guy against number 1 LSU on Tuesday night this week at Dish-Falk Field, then he's gonna get tested. And the guy I'm intrigued by is the lefty David Shaw, who transferred from Rice. He's made 4 appearances and he's yet to give up an earned run. And I think he's only given up 1 hit. 6'7" lefty, and he's just been rock solid in his 4 appearances. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on him right now. He's definitely a reliever, but LeBaron Johnson, let's see what he can do. He struggled a little bit in his first outing, that first weekend, in his relief appearances, but he's got presence. He's got a fastball, and Texas needs to develop, more. They need to have 5 starters, because you never know with injuries, that kind of thing. And so let's see what LeBaron Johnson can do with this opportunity against number 1 LSU on Tuesday.
Yeah, because last year Texas, they had the injury to a starter, and I'm sorry, I'm
Tanner Witt.
blanking. Tanner Witt, yeah. And then, oh my gosh, they had someone step up. Why can't I think of the guy's name?
Lucas Gordon.
Lucas Gordon, that's right. Yeah, I wanted to say Lucas Field. I'm like, no, that's not. I think I have the NFL Combine like in my mind right now. But yeah, you definitely need depth in your pitching rotation, and it's crucial. I mean, I even looking in like the pros, I go back to when Nolan Ryan was, consulting and working with the Rangers when they did make it to the World Series. They were 1 out away from winning that World Series. What was that, 2011 against St. Louis? But ever since he left, like they've made such a priority on pitching, the bullpen, making sure they had quality pitchers. And ever since he's left, it feels like the Rangers have just been just bad, and it's because I feel like they don't have the priority pitching that they, placing a priority on the pitching rotation, the pitching staff that Nolan had, and it's showing, and so Texas needs several. any team, if you're going to make a run, especially with baseball, with it being such a long season, how many games they play. I mean, shoot, sometimes they play 5 games a week. You need to have that. You need to have quality depth. You need to have a bullpen you can trust, but you for sure need more than just 3 weekend starters in baseball.
Yeah, and you got to have consistency out of the bullpen. That's why I think, um, David Shaw, um, and Heston Toll, who came over from Arkansas, who's looked pretty good in his relief appearances, and Chris Stewart. I know he's given up some hits, but he's got good stuff, and he does not give a flip. I mean, he will just throw the heat on both sides of the plate, and I think he'll get better as the season goes on. And this is what we have to watch with Woody Williams, the new pitching coach, because last year the pitching didn't get better. And that's why Sean Allen was let go. David Pierce is a pitching coach, at heart. Pierce has done everything, but and bringing in Woody Williams, a guy who pitched in the big leagues for 15 years and has been a JUCO pitching coach, and now getting his chance at Texas. We got to see these guys get better as the season goes on. That did not happen last year, and it hurt Texas when it mattered most, right there too, in barbecue out of Omaha. But let's see if these pitchers develop. And I see we're getting comments over from folks about Tanner Witt, and that's been a strange situation. David Pierce has not been totally forthcoming about the timetable for Tanner Witt. Obviously there's been a little bit of a maybe a delay, or I don't want to say setback because that makes it sound like there was a re-injury or something, but
Right.
that's a difficult injury to come back from, the Tommy John surgery. But let's see, because that kid's a talent, and whatever that timetable is, he'll be welcome back once he's fully healthy.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to football here. This is from, Mikey Gress 6. There are rumors of DJ Campbell possibly missing time this spring due to injury. Have you heard anything on this? Little behind the scenes, we were talking about this on our staff group text today. Chip, it's something we're definitely looking into, but I'll let you, chime in on that.
I mean, DJ Campbell, put on his social media a picture of him in a hospital bed, a few weeks ago. We have not heard of, an injury that would, be significant. And Texas typically won't report on injuries unless it results in missing significant time. So, we'll get this update from Steve Sarkisian that we were supposed to get before the ice storm, but that's certainly a question, because DJ Campbell did post a picture of himself in a hospital bed, but it didn't say what it was. And
right.
There was no cast. There was no, he could have been in there getting a physical or something, but
yeah. There's no visible injury that was shown in the picture, but it was him in a hospital bed.
Right. Like, we know that Cole Hudson had off-season surgery. We know Connor Robertson had off-season surgery, and they're going to miss time. Cole Hudson, I think, is going to miss the entire spring. Connor Robertson's going to miss part of the spring. He had wrist surgery.
And Jonathan Brooks, we know he had
Jonathan Brooks,
surgery.
right. So
it's rare that we don't know something like that if it was something substantial, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah. So we'll stay tuned on that one. We've not heard anything significant on DJ Campbell.
Yeah, and that's a guy that I know, Kyle Flood is looking forward to him kind of taking that next step. Him and Cam Williams were guys that he talked a lot about at the Alamo Bowl when we did get to talk to Kyle Flood. So, it's a big enough name and contributor to where if there was it would be surprising to me if there was something substantial that we had not heard of it at this point yet, because it's been a few weeks since. So, but yeah. Well, TBD. Sorry, that's not really an answer, but it's kind of a TBD. We'll see what Sark has to say about it, but nothing we've heard so far.
Yeah, and with Cole Hudson out, Cole Hudson, who started every game at right guard. This spring is a big opportunity for DJ Campbell. So it's he's a guy who, if we're looking for breakout, he's a guy who could stand to have a breakout year because he was considered the number one interior lineman recruit in the country in 2022.
Yeah. All right. This one here from Horns 24/7 member, I'm guessing it's South Texas Horn 90. From what you know about winter workouts, who is your offensive/defensive breakout player for next year? It's kind of a spin we said about spring, but this is for next year. Chip, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, now we're talking about veteran guys, in my opinion. I'll start on defense first. I mean, you'd love it to be Jalen Catalon, honestly. A guy who comes in who was an all SEC player as a freshman at Arkansas. He's from the state of Texas. This is a guy who he just sees the game. He's got that football IQ. Very instinctive player, but also a guy who knows what he's looking for in terms of reading his keys and just being in the right place at the right time, getting the defense lined up. I just think you'd love it to be Jalen Catalon as the quarterback of your secondary. You talk about being able to improve your pass defense. There's a guy who can help you improve it. On offense, in terms of breakout, I mean, I think it's either Isaiah Nair or A.D. Mitchell from Georgia, or both. But I think one of those two guys is going to break out. Now, they're both bigger receivers. Nair 6'3", A.D. Mitchell 6'4", both long wingspan, contested catches, big catch radius. Taylor and I have talked about how those big receivers are a quarterback's best friend because you can throw it, high and let them go get it. And so I'll put those two out there. How about you, Taylor?
Okay. Well, for defense, I'm gonna go with Justice Finkley. I feel like he's poised, I would say, for a breakout type of season. I really like his game in general. I really liked him as a recruit coming out. I think he's in a position where he could really be a dominant player at the edge position for this Texas defense, and has more of an opportunity, now with Ovia Gofu not there. So I would say I'm going to go with Justice Finkley. Offense, man, I think you hope it's Quinn Ewers, right? But what you would consider breakout for a guy that pretty much was a starter last year, I'm not sure. It's hard not to kind of go with what you're saying of either A.D. Mitchell or Isaiah Nair or both. I think I don't want to copy you, but I feel like that's the right answer, right? It's probably the combo of them too, because these are two guys that could, in a sense, maybe potentially resemble what Lil Jordan Humphrey and Colin Johnson were for Texas in 2018, that season. I mean, they're, as we've talked about, quarterback's best friend is, number one, a solid running game, and two, those big body receivers that you can throw the 50-50 balls up to in the air, and they're going to have more times than not the height advantage, the length advantage over a corner or somebody in the secondary. So I think that's the right answer. And I don't want to just copy what you said, but I think that's definitely the answer. Is they're both really, really solid players. I think that they're poised, and Texas needs those big body receivers. That's not really something that they had last year. I mean, Jatavian Sanders had a breakout season because he kind of filled that role in a sense when Texas didn't have the length after Isaiah Nair went out in fall camp last year.
Yeah, and A.D. Mitchell has done it. He caught the game-winning touchdown in a playoff against Ohio State. He caught a touchdown in the national championship game against TCU. He caught a touchdown in the college football playoff a year ago against Michigan. I mean, he's played in 4 college football playoff games and caught a touchdown in each one of them, and caught the game winner against Ohio State. So that's what you want. You want a big time player who's going to make a big time play in a big time game. And that kind of confidence and experience is hard to find. And so Texas, great job, appealing to AD Mitchell, who, we've written about, has a child in the state of Texas he wants to be closer to. So Texas benefits from that. And let's see what he brings, because I'm hearing really good things about him in winter conditioning. Now, it's a lot of throwing the football against air, but he's a big, fast guy, and he's all about contested catches, and that's the thing. I mean, Jatavian Sanders made those kinds of catches in high school, and then boom, he gets to Texas and he makes them in college games, and that's what you need, and that's what Texas has been lacking, is that receiver that's going to go win the 50-50 ball, the big receiver. We know Xavier Worthy can run by people, but he doesn't do well in the 50-50 balls when it's a tightly contested situation. Isaiah Nair and AD Mitchell, they do, and you need that. You desperately need that as an offense, and so let's see what these guys bring.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go to a comment from the YouTube page from Frank Decluet. If Ewers passes for 3,500 yards with 35 passing touchdowns and 5 interceptions, would Texas be in the Big 12 championship and possible playoff team?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great numbers. Those are gaudy numbers.
Yeah.
Especially, that Sarkisian wants to run the football and will probably have 1,000-yard rusher. If not, he'd probably have like a 900-yard rusher and an 800-yard rusher, depending on just how balanced that running back room is. And so, those are numbers. Those are championship numbers right there.
Yeah. I mean, if you compare it, I just pulled this up here from the 2018 season. I know I'm going back to Sam Ehlinger comparison, but I feel like it is kind of relevant. I mean, that was his second year in the offense, second year playing at Texas. His numbers that season, he had 3,292 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. And Texas played in the Big 12 title game. They didn't win it, but they still played in the Big 12 title game. You add 10 more touchdowns. I know, only 200 more yards of passing, but you add 10 more touchdowns to that. Yes, 100. I mean, unless for some reason the Big 12 is just some monster of a conference this season, that would be probably the only thing that would change it. But, I definitely think Texas would be for sure in the Big 12 championship game and possibly a playoff team. I fully believe that. And it's funny when you said that about we'll probably have 1,000-yard rusher, or they may have two, one like 800, one like 700 type of yards. That's essentially exactly what Texas had in 2018 as well. With, Trey Watson had 786 yards rushing. Keontae Ingram had 708 yards rushing. Obviously, Sam Ehlinger also ran the ball a lot too. But you compare the numbers of what Frank is posing here. That's what Texas was essentially in 2018, and they did play for that championship. So,
yeah, those numbers would be. Every Texas fan would take those numbers right now.
Yeah, I think every college team out there and fans of teams would take those numbers from a quarterback right now. And shoot, if he has those numbers, I wouldn't be surprised if he is in New York for the Heisman too,
right.
I would say. So
right. I agree with that.
Yeah. All right, let's go here. Swag Nasty, the Horns 24/7 member. We kind of touched on this a little bit. But what names for offensive analysts should we get excited about? Anyone comparable to a GP Gary Patterson level higher in terms of experience?
Yeah, I mean, like Taylor said, we heard some names early on, and and then nothing materialized. And so, I think Steve Sarkisian's taking his time because there is, um, the I don't know if he would bring in a former NFL, um, person. He spent time in the NFL with the Atlanta Falcons, and um, from a timing standpoint, he's I think he's doing his due diligence for sure. And I do think he sort of had an idea of what he wanted and then changed his mind. And and so I think that's why we've seen the just the time play out before this hire is made, because as Taylor said, that job has been posted for well over 30 days. We're coming up on 60 days. And I know Sark wanted to hire his receivers coach first, which he's done with Chris Jackson. And so, I just think he's doing his due diligence and making sure that he's, bringing in someone who's going to help him with a specific need or with a bunch of different needs. So it's interesting. It is interesting. And I do think this is where Chris Del Conte, the athletic director, is a good sounding board, because Chris Del Conte was very influential in the hiring of Gary Patterson. He was sort of the matchmaker. He just said, hey, to Gary Patterson, you can come down here and I'll have you talk to Sark, and it worked out great. So, um, I'm intrigued just like everyone else. There was some speculation, maybe that it would be David Cutcliffe, who has coached the Mannings. He was Peyton Manning's offensive coordinator at Tennessee. Then he was Eli Manning's head coach at Ole Miss. And of course, you've got Arch Manning at Texas. But I think David Cutcliffe has been, he was successful as a head coach at Duke. But I think he's been, he's also been very picky about what he might want to do next. So it's going to be interesting, because I've said it, the offense held this team back last year.
Mm-hmm.
The defense did its part. The offense held this team back, not being able to do more against TCU, and not being able to close out the Oklahoma State game. The defense did struggle against Texas Tech on those fourth downs, but the offense was running the football in the fourth quarter against Oklahoma State, and then threw it unsuccessfully. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say one thing, Chip, when I'm looking at the special assistant to the head coach on offense, I feel like if this is going to be an impactful type of hire, Sark needs to get somebody that he trusts, and probably somebody he's worked with before, who can actually be a voice in his ear in games that he's going to listen to, or on the sideline, whatever it may be, depending if they want to give one of the headsets to last year Gary Patterson didn't take one of the headsets, but those coaches are allowed to be on the headset, I believe.
They just can't have a microphone.
Yeah, they just can't. Yeah. So, I feel like he's got to find somebody for that role. Again, not just to hire the role, but somebody that he's going to listen to. Because I do think that was one of the issues from talking to sources. And I think it showed up in games. I think a lot of people could know that Sark was kind of on an island a lot of times as the offensive play caller and head coach in some of those games. Didn't see everything, clearly. I think pretty much everybody on that staff, especially on offense, would have liked for him to stick with the run in some of the games that they lost, and Sark didn't. So there wasn't somebody that he was trusting of, I think, in last year's staff. And if he's, wants to really help this offense take that next step, he's probably going to have to find an offensive special assistant that he's worked with so that he already knows that he can trust him and listen to the voice. Because otherwise, it's like one thing if it's Gary Patterson, it's the other side of the ball, coming off of the season where the defense struggled some, especially late in games. The guy that knew the Big 12 conference. I mean, that was a match made in heaven for Texas. Probably not so much for Gary Patterson, but still, for that him just landing at Texas there, that was crucial. But Sark doesn't have to communicate as much with the defensive coaches. That was a crucial addition for Pete Kwiatkowski and the staff to have that sounding board from the defense. Sark's just got to find somebody that he trusts and that he's probably worked with, I would say. And that's not saying that hiring anybody else wouldn't work. I feel like he's got to fully trust somebody. And I would be surprised if he listened to somebody that he has not previously worked with, when it comes to in-game type of decisions on offense.
Yeah. And remember, there's a very good chance that they will approve a rule change that would allow any institutional member to coach during the week. So, that would be a bit of a game changer. Not that it's not happening already, but
I know I was going to say
but that rule came up in August, and I think a lot of people thought it was going to pass. It didn't. And there's some thought that it'll get revisited again in April. We'll see, but it's you want to have guys, who are in that analyst, special assistant role, who could also bring some real gravitas to your coaching during the week. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah. And if that does pass too, I would think the role of director of player development, for instance, that is a role a lot of times, but that's usually kind of more of a behind the scenes, support staff person. If that rule does pass, I would not be surprised if you see more programs either adding that type of job or changing who is in those type of jobs to maybe a former coach who can be on the field and coaching instead of just being a resource for the players too.
Yeah. You got Michael Huff right now at Texas in one of those roles. Wouldn't hurt to have a former Thorpe Award winner, former top 10 draft pick coaching your DBs as well. Not that it's not already happening, but.
All right, here's a question from YouTube here from T. Gat. Any chance Malik Murphy can be used as a gadget player or similar to Tyrone Swoops in the 18-wheeler package? Would love the kid to get some playing time. Need your plan A, B, C, D for QB position.
Yeah, I just want to see Malik Murphy compete. Last year was a mess because of his, he had ankle surgery, he broke his ankle in December in a state championship win. And then he had the scooter accident where he hurt his wrist. Last year was kind of his development didn't happen the way he envisioned it because he was an early enrollee, but because of that broken ankle suffered in December, it totally limited his development and growth. It wasn't normal. And I'm not going to say it was a lost year because he was in meetings. He's in the second year of this offense. He should be really getting comfortable with this offense now. And he's hungry. And he's not, he's not a guy who's like, oh man, here comes Arch Manning. I'm thinking about getting the portal. No, he's like, I love it at Texas. I'm ready. I'm ready to compete. And so he's definitely a storyline. I think he's critical. Now, if we're just playing pie in the sky hypotheticals, the ideal situation would be for Quinn Ewers to light it up this year. He's NFL draft eligible after this season and he moves on. And then you've got Malik Murphy and Arch Manning battling it out to be the starting quarterback in 24. Now, because Quinn Ewers was in my opinion, a true freshman last year and went through true freshman growing pains, we have to wait and see how big a step he takes, and if he's even in the conversation to be a 2-and-done player. But I think Malik Murphy is essential because he needs to, and listen, I'm not in those meetings. I don't know how much he's getting coached by Steve Sarkisian, or how much he's getting coached by, I know he's getting coached a lot by AJ Milwee, but Steve Sarkisian did help groom Matt Castle as a backup quarterback at USC. Castle barely played as a quarterback at USC and ended up, going on to the NFL and having a 15-year NFL career, was a Pro Bowl quarterback. And so if you're a Texas fan, you're hoping Malik Murphy is that guy that wants to keep developing and wants to do it at Texas. And if he doesn't beat out Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning, that he's that guy who's one play away. And when he comes in, man, it's wow, this guy's legit. And so we'll see, but his personality, everything is great for that locker room. I've talked about how he's seen as the mayor of that locker room. And I want to see him, now that he's totally healthy, I want to see him compete and see what he's got, because he is a physical talent. And if he's digesting this offense and getting comfortable with it, he has a chance to be a big time player.
Yeah. And I will say one thing, as you had said with him, he had the injuries. He was an early enrollee, so he's been on campus for a full year. And I wouldn't necessarily say it is a lost year for him, because I don't think he came into Texas expecting to compete for the starting job. He was kind of raw. He's a very high ceiling, but kind of a raw player coming out of high school even. So, but I think it's not a lost year because he has had a year in the playbook, in the same offense. He witnessed, as bad as it was for Quinn Ewers, he witnessed QB1 going down and the next guy stepping up. And, Hudson Card kept Texas in games and won some games for Texas too. But, and he was playing through an injury too. So I think that the fact that Malik Murphy witnessed that happening and really saw it firsthand, like, okay, I really am one play away, because this is what happened, my first year, my freshman year, and I wasn't even able to play. I feel like with everything from a personality standpoint that we've heard about him, I feel he's a guy that's probably going, if he's healthy, will be ready to be, the one play away type of guy. And if he competes with if he beats Quinn Ewers out, I mean, that would be shocking, but that's huge, but him having, taking that step from a competition level, competing with Quinn Ewers, competition, what is it? Competition breeds, what's that saying there? Like having a competitive room is a good thing, especially at quarterback. I mean, think about when Texas considered themselves DBU. Look at some of the guys that were in the defensive backfield or on the bench. I mean, like that iron sharpens iron type of mentality is huge. And you want that at quarterback too. And you want a guy that's bought in. And from all accounts we've heard, Malik Murphy is bought in. Obviously didn't balk when Arch Manning signed with Texas, stuck with his commitment when knowing that Sark and then we're going to go to the transfer portal to get Quinn Ewers even last year too, or prior to last season. He was already committed, to Texas. He could have backed off there, but he didn't. So I think that shows Texas is the place he wants to be. And I would be surprised if his, number is called in a game, say if Quinn Ewers were to go down or something like that. I would be shocked if he was shell-shocked or not ready to go from everything that we've heard about him.
Yeah, and he's not like Jaquindon Jackson, who came here from Duncanville and is now a running back at Utah. Malik Murphy's a passer. He is a
pro-style quarterback, yeah.
Right. And that's what Steve Sarkisian is always going to recruit. Mm-hmm. He is a pro-style guy, which, that raises narrows the margin for error, right? I mean, most teams are moving to a mobile quarterback, and Texas won a national championship with a dual threat quarterback, probably the best ever dual threat quarterback in Vince Young. And there are coaches who say, I'll always have a dual threat quarterback like Tom Herman, because that quarterback as a runner outnumbers the defense and gives you the advantage. That's not Malik Murphy. Malik Murphy is a passer. And that's what Steve Sarkisian's always going to recruit. So he's not a gadget guy quarterback. He's a guy you want to be ready when he's one play away. If he doesn't beat out Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning, he's that guy you need in the program, because we saw last year at not just Texas, but TCU and K-State, you got to have a backup quarterback who can come in and be a difference maker. And the key for Steve Sarkisian is convincing Malik Murphy that, hey, I'm the guy to develop you. You're developing, and we're going to need you. We're going to need you. At some point, they're going to need him. And he's got to buy it, believe it, love it. And so far, I think he does love being at Texas.
Yeah, I agree. All right, here's one more here from Horns 24/7 member Triplet Joseph 44. Is the running game overrated? We went to the Big 12 title game and won a Sugar Bowl with Trey Watson, but didn't accomplish anything with 3 NFL backs, including Keontae Ingram. Interesting question.
Yeah, it's not overrated, because we saw them close out the win over Baylor, close out K-State. They were on the verge of closing out Oklahoma State with that running game. I mean, when
they went away from it.
When Bijan Robinson ran it, 20 plus times, Texas won games. And when Texas ran the ball as a team, 30, 40 plus times, they won. So it's essential. And Sark knows that. And as a guy who wants to have a pro style play action pass offense, he knows he's got to have a running game. And that's why those tight ends are so important, not only to the passing game for all the motion that they do to tip off the quarterback if the defense is in man or zone, but those tight ends have to be lead blockers on power plays. And so, the running game is essential. And Texas is doing a great job. Tashard Choice doing a great job of recruiting running backs, because I talked to the Baxter family, and that relationship with Tashard Choice was huge in his picking Texas. Tashard Choice was recruiting CJ Baxter when Tashard Choice was still at Georgia Tech. He was one of the first ones in on CJ Baxter, and that's Tashard Choice's MO. I mean, he gets on the talented kids right away, builds that relationship, and then makes them feel like they can't, be without him when it comes time to make a decision. So the running game is not overrated. You just need, that balance. And I think Steve Sarkisian's getting there. We've talked about it. He feels better about his receiver group. He feels like the passing game is going to be more on par with what he had at Alabama here in 2023, because of the depth of the receivers, and that all complements each other, the running game and the passing game. So,
and a quarterback that's 1 year older, is not. I know he was a redshirt freshman. Chip and I say this all the time. Quinn Ewers was a true freshman who hadn't played football for 2 years last season. So that's going, him taking that next step is going to make the overall offense more balanced, as you had said, and not have to only rely on the running backs. But there have been games, even before last season, go back to the TCU game in 2021 and Steve Sarkisian's first year at Texas. Bijan Robinson ran away with the win for Texas because the passing game was bad in that game, like real bad. And he ran it so many times that Gary Patterson angrily called it out a little bit. And I think I still to this day think that it kind of shook Sark a little bit. The comments that Gary Patterson had after that game when he said he would never run a guy 36 times, I think it was. And then Bijan didn't get a ton of more than like 20 carries, I don't think, all season in any game. So I know that the running game, I don't think, is going to make it to where you're going to win the national championship. But if you have quality running game, where if the quarterback's struggling or receivers, weather conditions can impact it. If you have that quality running game to either rely on or keep a balanced attack, it's huge. And so I think Texas is more in a position this year to have that, even without Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, who are obviously quality players, the guys that could, put the game on their shoulders. I just think the offense as a whole being 1 year older, the offensive line being 1 year older, really can make it more of a balanced offense, similar to what he had at Alabama. So yeah, I don't think the running game is overrated at all.
Yeah. Well, folks, this has been fun. It's always fun when we do a live mailbag edition of the Flagship Podcast. Thanks so much for all the questions that were posted at horns247.com and also posted on YouTube and Facebook here in our chat throughout this broadcast. And we'll continue to do these because they're fun. They're fun.
Yeah, they are.
And it's a big week. It's a big week, folks. You got the Texas women with a chance to clinch at least a share of the Big 12 regular season championship on Monday night against Baylor at the Moody Center. And you got Texas LSU baseball, LSU, the number 1 team in the country, on Tuesday. And then the Texas men are at TCU on Wednesday. And they have to win that game to have any chance of sharing the Big 12 regular season championship with Kansas after Texas lost to Baylor last weekend and Kansas eked out a home win over West Virginia. So, and again, we're a week away from the start of spring football. So, and congrats again to Eddie Reese and Carol Capitani, Texas men's and women's swimming. Texas is the only team ever to win the Big 12 swimming and diving championship. No other team has ever won it. Texas.
That is so wild. That is so wild.
Has won every single one of them. And they just did it again this past weekend. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in and playing along. For Taylor Estes, I am Chip Brown. Till next time, we'll see you over at horns247.com. Make sure you're subscribed to the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel right there. Just hit that subscribe button so that you'll always know when we're doing these broadcasts and all the other great podcasts on our platform with Jeff Howe and Rod Babers, the Blitz, and then you've got of course, Mike Roach and Hudson Standish with the state of recruiting. So until next time, stay safe and keep the faith.